News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Ridgell and Janella Carrera with Betsy Brown and Roselle Romanes. PNC Sports with Blake Watson. And weather with Joanna O. With your news now.
Hafa, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Pacific News Center's News Now. We're broadcasting live in Saipan and in Guam. I'm Clint Ridgell. Topping your news tonight, detectives were called to a recycling facility in Deredo yesterday after employees reported finding a human skull inside one of the vehicles they were about to crush. And as PNC's Betsy Brown reports, this might not be the first time the skull was discovered.
Employees at Global Recycling weren't sure exactly what it is that they found in the back seat of a Mercedes brought to the Deredo facility this week, but it appears their suspicions were true.
It seemed to be a severed human skull that was found in the back of a junk car that was towed in, white Mercedes.
Global Recycling Supervisor Alan Chu says it didn't appear that the remains were from a recent death.
I'm not an expert or anything, but just by me looking at it, it looked pretty old. It seemed also to have, like it was cut with a medical instrument. Yeah, if you can see, it's a very clean cut into the skull, and it was there was no flesh on it or anything, so it seemed to be that it was staying there for quite a while.
The skull was found inside of this vehicle while employees were dismantling it for recycling.
Usually when we take the car, so we have to disassemble it, so we have to take it apart. And in the back seat, I think the skull was in a pot and it was just lying there. And then one of the staff looked at it. He wasn't sure if it was real or not. And then later on, he asked someone else to take a look at it, and the guy thought it was real. And then afterwards, the next day, we contacted GPD regarding the skull.
But this might not be the first time this same skull was discovered. Medical examiner Dr. Aurelio Espinola told PNC today that he's examined the same skull before. He couldn't tell us exactly how long ago that it was that he last looked at the case, but he said it's been several years. According to the medical examiner, the skull belongs to a young female. As for the vehicle the skull was found in, Chu says it was brought in for recycling only a few days ago.
GPD now, from what they told me, is they're trying to backtrack to the original person who brought it in. It was brought in through a towing service, so they have to go down the line to interview the tow truck driver and then also the original owner of the vehicle.
Balahaja confirmed that officers did respond to a reported found skull at the recycling facility yesterday, and he said the criminal investigation section would conduct a follow-up investigation. Betsy Brown, PNC News.
John F. Kennedy High School was placed on lockdown for about 45 minutes this morning after a complaint of a sexual assault was made. GPD PIO AJ Balahaja confirms for PNC that a call was made about a potential sexual assault. However, he says that there was no actual sexual penetration. Balahaja says that there is a possible suspect described as a male Chukis who's tall with a medium build, and he was wearing a JFK polo shirt and black basketball shorts. He's also described as having short black curly hair and a goatee. DOE Deputy Superintendent Rob Malay says the lockdown was initiated at 9:45 this morning after administrators were notified that an incident had occurred on campus. Balahaja said the police were also told that the suspect may have still been on campus. Malay could not confirm whether there was a reported intruder on campus or not.
We're still trying to get to the finer details of the event to validate what took place and to make sure.
And officers from the Criminal Justice Strike Force made a sweep of the campus, which Balahaja said resulted in negative findings. The lockdown was lifted at about 10:30 a.m. In other news, the governor's office says that it defeats the purpose if the Naval Hospital bills Gov Guam for compact immigrants that it refers to the Naval Hospital. The Navy has an agreement that allows Gov Guam to refer such patients, but only if Gov Guam pays for it.
Governor Eddie Calvo's spokeswoman, Oyaol Nirairikla, says that there is an agreement between Gov Guam and the Navy that allows Gov Guam to refer compact migrants to the Naval Hospital, but it would also require Gov Guam to pay for it.
That's just kind of defeats the purpose of having, this process in place. The whole point is to try to get the federal government to assist us into helping our fellow Guamanians, who need medical attention.
And the agreement doesn't even outline how Gov Guam should refer these patients.
It doesn't say, how many patients we can refer, the state of their health, like is it just for emergencies or is it for, can we send them if they come in with a cold or, the baby has a fever, anything like that. So we need to come up with those sort of processes and procedures.
Meanwhile, Governor Eddie Calvo is currently in the U.S. mainland speaking to officials in Washington, D.C. about Guam's compact impact needs.
So obviously an increase in appropriation would be good, and that's one solution that we can look at. The governor is also looking at other solutions, however. One of them an offset of costs.
One example is allowing Gov Guam to use Medicare for migrants without having to chip in Gov Guam's matching funds that are normally required.
Gov Guam receives about $14 million a year to pay for the impact of hosting compact migrants. In related news, Interior Secretary Sally Jewell agrees that the islands need more compact impact aid, but she argues it's not the administration's fault that they're not getting it. PNC's Washington correspondent Matt Kay reports.
Secretary Jewell conceded outside this week's IGIA meeting here, Guam and the NMI are coming up short in paying for the health, education, and other costs for migrants from the freely associated states.
We support additional compact impact aid. This is something that, we continue to raise awareness of with members of Congress. It's got to be part of the budget. It's got to be funded.
But when asked about the administration's proposal to have discretionary versus mandatory compact aid in the president's proposed budget, Jewell defended the spending plan and again put the onus on Congress.
I'm going to be out defending the budget. Many times there are lots of competing demands for money, and we'll make the case, but it's going to be up to Congress to act.
But is all the blame for underfunding such an important program for the islands Congress's fault? Guam Congresswoman Madeline Bordallo isn't buying it, telling Interior officials during the IGIA meeting OIA's got its budget priorities wrong.
I am disturbed when an issue like climate change takes first and sweeping priority over a long-standing and equally urgent issue such as compact impact. I understand the importance of addressing climate change as well as other OIA priorities, but this cannot be at the expense of compact impact.
OIA Assistant Secretary Kia Aina told Bordallo climate change is a priority of President Obama as well as Secretary Jewell. Kia Aina said, "We did get our marching orders to ensure the islands can deal with climate change." On Capitol Hill, Matt Kay for PNC News.
All right, let's check in with PNC's Blake Watson now, who's turning the sports world upside down.
Hey, baseball, June 7th, 1995. An 11-year-old Blake Watson goes to the Texas Rangers baseball game. They ended up beating the Kansas City Royals 10-4. They improved to 23-17 with that win. This ball, from there. Great baseball memory. Let's make some more. Baseball coming up in sports. Plus, we try something a little bit different. Gymnastics. Yeah, literally, you don't want to miss it. You're going to flip for this. I guarantee you. Flip.